Imagine sitting at a cold metal table for hours, your face heavily bruised and your vision blurring into a gray haze. You are an 18-year-old boy in agonizing pain, and you are begging the person across from you for a few minutes to sleep. It is Christmas Day, 2006. The detective staring back from the other side of the table doesn't offer a blanket or medical help. He looks at your injuries and hears your fragmented answers, and he decides you are a killer, feigning a daze to avoid a confession. Inside this sterile room, the detective has committed to a specific theory of the crime. He sees a suspect who is being difficult, not a survivor who is physically failing. That commitment to a single story makes him ignore the swelling in your face and the way your speech is beginning to slur. This is the danger of confirmation bias in an investigation. When a detective locks on to a pre-written narrative, the incoming physical evidence is filtered to fit that story, even when that evidence is a person dying in front of them. The events leading to this room began with a welfare check. Ryan's parents hadn't heard from him or his girlfriend for 2 days, and their call for help brought Phoenix police to their apartment at dusk. Inside, officers found a scene of total violence. 21-year-old Heather Quan was deceased on the couch. Ryan Waller was alive and standing, but his face was severely battered and he seemed unable to process his surroundings. When police began questioning him on the spot, Ryan couldn't provide basic details. He struggled to remember his school grade and even Heather's last name. The officers immediately categorized this confusion as the evasive behavior of a guilty man. In many departments, the priority at a homicide scene is identifying a suspect, which can lead to a critical oversight. By focusing exclusively on Ryan's erratic answers as evidence of deception, the responding officers bypassed the standard medical triage required for a victim found at a violent crime scene with visible head trauma. The investigation moved to the precinct, where a grueling 6-hour questioning session began. By the 30-minute mark, the detective's frustration with Ryan's lack of cooperation had peaked. Ryan eventually dropped a detail that should have stopped the clock. He told the detective he couldn't have committed the crime because, as he put it, "I got shot in the eye." The detective scoffed at the claim. He mocked the idea that someone could take a revolver shot to the face and still be sitting upright in an interrogation chair hours later. He dismissed it as a desperate fabrication. The questioning relentlessly continued for hours. In the police footage, Ryan's physical condition visibly deteriorates as he slumps further into the chair, resting his head on the metal surface and repeating that his head hurts. It wasn't until the detective finally stepped closer to look at the wound that he realized the trauma was real. The footage shows him erupting into a panic, rushing out of the room to finally call for an ambulance. The detective's focus on a confession cost Ryan 6 hours of critical medical intervention. During that time, the swelling and hemorrhaging in his brain went untreated, turning a survivable injury into permanent damage. The truth of what happened began 48 hours earlier, on December 23rd. Ryan's ex-roommate, Richie Carver, and his father, Larry Carver, had forced their way into the apartment. This model shows the attack. Richie Carver shot Ryan directly in the face. The bullet entered through his orbital bone, shattering the socket, and sending 6 bone fragments tearing through his brain tissue. A second bullet grazed above his ear, adding massive trauma. Believing Ryan was dead, the attackers entered and executed Heather to eliminate her as a witness. For the next 2 days, Ryan survived alone. Disoriented and bleeding, he wandered the apartment in a daze, falling in and out of consciousness next to Heather's body. Every instance of evasive behavior recorded by police, the forgotten names, the disorientation, traces directly back to the physical trauma of the bullet's path. He was exhibiting clinical symptoms of massive brain trauma, not the calculated silence of a suspect. Emergency surgery saved Ryan's life, but his recovery left him with permanent gaps in his memory, the total loss of his eyesight, and a brain chemistry prone to sudden, violent seizures. As Ryan struggled to recover, the legal system hit a roadblock. While Richie Carver was sentenced to natural life, charges against his father, Larry, were initially dismissed. his wife invoked marital privilege, a legal rule that prevents a spouse from being forced to testify against their partner. Heather's family refused to accept the dismissal. They began a campaign to change Arizona state law, determined to ensure marital privilege could not be used to shield suspects in a homicide investigation. Their efforts led to the passage of Heather's Law, which closed that loophole. In 2011, Larry Carver was re-indicted and convicted of first-degree murder. Heather's Law corrected a loophole in the courtroom, but it could not address the 6-hour delay in the interrogation room, sealing Ryan's medical fate. For the next decade, Ryan lived with the physical consequences of the attack and the lack of immediate care. His life was defined by the constant management of chronic pain and high risk of neurological events. In January 2016, Ryan Waller passed away after suffering a massive seizure. Medical experts confirmed the seizure was a direct result of the brain injuries and scarring sustained during the 2006 attack. This tragedy is a record of 2 young lives lost, one taken by a malicious intruder, the other shaped by a system failing to look at the physical evidence in front of it. Ryan's story serves as a reminder of the human cost of institutional assumptions. When the process of extracting a confession replaces the duty of basic human observation, the system risks inflicting further trauma on the very victims it was created to protect.